time, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to interrupt me and ask a question. If you just raise your hand and type in your question, I do try to keep an eye on when hands are being raised. And I'd rather answer your question while it's fresh in your mind and we're talking about the given subject than to wait until the very end and hope that you remember what your question was. So please, again, do not hesitate to interrupt me and ask a question if you're not clear on something. Okay? So version 8 reports. To get into the reports, you're going to go to Analysis up on top and Reports on the side. That is going to open up a separate window. Now, what that means for you is that you can have reports running all day long, whether or not you are in Retail Pro or not. So I do have quite a few customers that choose to leave their reports open, so all they have to do is just click on it, bring up the report that they want, and run it at the time that they want to run it. So for me, when I first learned reports, one of the more difficult things that I ran into was knowing where to start. I mean, there's a few different choices here. Where do I really go to either find the report, default report that I'm looking for, or where's the best place to create the report that I want to make? So I want to start off with explaining what each type of report can do for you. Now, the list reports are exactly like what they sound like. They're a list of either customers, departments, vendors, or employees. If it is a field that you would find in the customer database, it is a field that you can put on a customer list. There is, however, no sales information in any of the list reports. There's no way to add it to any of the list reports. So they are kind of limited in what they can offer, but if you're looking to do a mailer and you want everybody's address, or you're looking to do an email blast, these are the types of reports that you would want to work with. We're probably not going to make any reports in here today in the list area. We will be making some reports in the other areas. Okay? So that's primarily what the list reports will do. Not very often used, but they are important for their purpose. Now, summaries are probably by far the most commonly used reports in Retail Pro, especially when you're first starting off. Summaries can give you information that is either transactional based, meaning that it's looking towards the header or the footer of the documents to give you your information. So things along the lines of receipt number, receipt date, customer name, shipping, tax, tender type, all of that would be considered transactional. It's information specifically about that transaction. Summaries can also give you merchandise-based reports, and typically those are things that you would find in the body of a document. Item-related things, department code, vendor code, description 1 and 2, cost, price, size, color, all of those fields that are in pretty much in inventory. Now, summaries, there are summaries, default summaries, on virtually everything. You have adjustment reports, your check-in and out reports so you can see how much time they've worked, on-hand reports, there's PO reports, receiving reports, and a lot of sales reports. Probably the vast majority of your sales reports that come by default from the developer excuse me, are listed in summaries. You can see it by department, by vendor, by cashier, day of the week, hour of the day, price points, best sellers, worst sellers. Most of those reports are in the summary area, and most of those are merchandise-based reports, so it's going to show you how much you're selling of the merchandise. Now, if you were to ask me, okay, I want to know specifically what items I've sold, the first place that I would send you is into the summaries, and probably I'd send you to this item summary report. Okay? Now, if you were to ask, I want to see every receipt that we sold a particular item on, and I want to see, or we sold a particular department on, and I want to see what item out of that department we sold, Unfortunately, a summary cannot mix and match transactional information with merchandise information. So I couldn't get the receipt number and get the specific item information out of a summary. I can, however, do that with a journal report. Now, journal reports are the closest thing you're going to get to reprinting the document without actually reprinting the document. So they're very, very good for troubleshooting. So that same scenario, you want to know every receipt number that you sold a certain department from, but you want to see the item, you would run a invoice journal or receipt journal, and when you ran it, you would choose to see the item detail. What they mean by item detail are the items that were on that particular report. And all you'd have to do is fill in the time frame you want to look at the sales for, and then filter for the department in question. Okay, just come here to DCS. So a journal report is the only report that can mix transactional information and merchandise-based information on the same report. And it is an option. So you may notice that there is a PO journal with item detail and a PO journal without item detail. So I'm just going to kind of quickly show you the difference here. And bear with me, I have no idea what this data is going to look like. It's from one of our customers. So as you can tell, basic PO information. The PO number, the vendor code, ship date, cancel date, how many were ordered and received, the order price, retail, and the order cost. Now, this report right now is 4 pages long. If I close this and I choose to look at the one with the item detail, it's the same exact report. The only difference is it is going to give me the detail. And now this report is going to look very, very different. I'm actually going to change this real quick. I don't want to see by store breakdown. I want to see what stores consolidated. Okay. Okay, so what I'm seeing is here is that same PO that we looked at, and then all of the items that are on that PO. If I go to the next page, there's a big PO. Here's my next PO with all of the items listed on it. Now, I went from a 4-page report to a 320-page report just by choosing to see the details. Okay, so needless to say, it does expand the report quite a bit if you choose to see the item details, but sometimes you need to see the items that were on the report. Now, the last type of report that we have is a merchandise report. And unfortunately, I wish they would have come up with a better name for it, but merchandise reports, the primary function that they can do that no other report can do is show you different data types. Now, what we mean by different data types is either different areas of the system. So if I wanted a report that showed me my current on hand, what I've sold in the last month, and what I've received in the last month, I could run that under Summaries, but it would take 3 reports. One for the on hand, one for the sales, one for the receiving. Or I could run a merchandise report and show them all on the same report per line item. That is one thing that constitutes a data type, is different areas of the system. The other thing that constitutes a data type is different time frames. So maybe I want to see my sales, but I want to compare this month's sales to last October's sales so I can see if there's any increase or decrease. Obviously, we're always hoping for an increase in sales. Okay, so I tend to think of merchandise reports as comparison reports. When I'm wanting to compare one thing to another, or different time frames, different areas of the system, what have I ordered in comparison to what I've received, that's typically when you would want to use a merchandise report. Now, true to its name, the fields that you can put on a merchandise report have to be fields that you would find in the inventory. So there is no customer name, there is no receipt number or voucher number. It's strictly, if it is a field that you find in inventory, it is a field that you can put on a merchandise report. That does include the cost, price, and quantity for your different data types. So even though I may be looking at purchasing versus receiving, I want to see what quantity and what cost I'm purchasing at versus what quantity and cost I'm looking at for receiving. Okay, so those are the main types of reports that we have. Now, by far, the easiest one to start with, if you have never made a report before, I usually recommend, if you've never done one, if you've never made one before, that you start in Summaries. They are the most straightforward and the most simple of all of the reports. So I'm going to get back down to my sales item summary, because that's a really, really common report to use. Now, anytime that you are looking to make a report, you can click on New up here, but you are going to need to know whether it's a merchandise-based report or a transactional report. I generally recommend, if there is a report that is close to what you want, like this item summary, I'm going to show you what it looks like by default. I'm just going to look at last month. Let's go back to last month. Okay. So if I click OK, this shows me the items that were sold in each department, by what vendor, the description one, color and size if there is one, how many I sold, the original price before any discounts, the discount that may have been given, the price after discount, the cost, the margin in dollars, and the margin in percent. Now, in looking at this report, one of the first things that I notice needs to be changed, this is showing up in portrait. And this dotted line right here lets me know the edge of the paper. So if I were to print this right now, even though it's only a half a page long, it still would print out 2 sheets of paper. These last 2 columns would be all that was on that second sheet of paper. I need to make it all fit, okay? So I look at this, and maybe since I don't need attribute and size, maybe I take them off. Maybe I'd rather have other fields there. So that's what we're about to go over, is how to modify an existing report. Now, never, ever, ever just simply edit a default report, because you may want to use it in another manner. Plus, you were unable, if you should mess it up, you were unable to delete it. And if we do a hotfix on your system or we upgrade you, then any default reports that you have modified are going to go back to their default setting when we do the hotfix or the upgrade. So all that hard work you put in changing that default report is going to be out the window. So always, always make a copy of the report that is close to what you want and give it a name. So I'm just going to put in here webinar. Now, I tend to put an exclamation at the beginning of the report name because computers organize first by symbols, then by numbers, then by letters. And the exclamation point happens to be the A of the symbologies. So I'm going to click OK. Now, that new report, because of the exclamation, has gone up here to the top. Okay? So I'm going to highlight this new report. Now I'm going to click on Edit. We are now in the actual report template. Okay? Now we're going to pretty much work our way down this left-hand side list. All of the reports have these buttons, no matter what type of report. We will talk about some of the extra buttons you'll have in some of the other report areas, but they do all have these 5 buttons, or these 6 buttons here. Okay? Now the layout, you'll notice that there is this thick black line right here. The layout is what you're going to see on your report. So it's your column headers. What do you want to visibly see on the report? So as it stands now, I have all of these fields on here. Now, I had discussed that I was going to take attribute and size off, 1, to make room, but 2, it didn't seem necessary. I didn't have anything that had an attribute or size. So if it's above the line and I double-click it, it goes below the line. If it is below the line and I double-click it, it goes above the line. So anything above the line is going to show up. Anything below the line will not show up on your report. Now, as you can tell, there are a lot of fields down underneath here, okay? Now, maybe I also want to grab description too. Now, I could scroll down using the scroll bar, and I do want to caution you. For those of you that like to use your scroll wheel, watch what happens. I'm on the quantity sold now. If I use my scroll wheel, it moves it even though that was not what I intended to do. Okay, so stay away from the scroll wheel and use your scroll bar instead. You can scroll down to find the fields you want. They're not in alphabetical order though, so you might find that it's easier and quicker to use the find box and type in what you want and then highlight the field, and it jumps you right down to where it's at. So I'm going to double click that. If I scroll back up, you'll see that my description too is now above the line. I'm then going to drag it and put it into the spot I want it. Okay? I also probably don't need my margin dollars, so I'm going to get rid of the margin dollars and just have my percent. Okay? Now that's everything that I want on my layout. I'm now ready to go to my sort. Now the sort is probably the most important button in any report type. Whereas layout is what you're going to see, sort is how you're going to see it. Now as a general rule of thumb, especially when you're first starting out making reports, I do generally recommend that you make your sort match your descriptive fields on your layout. So from quantity sold down, those are all value fields, and sorting deals with descriptive fields. So I want to put these 4 fields in my sort so it lays out the report and gives me the report in the order that I expected it. So I'm going to get rid of attribute and size, and again, I'm going to use the find box to find description too, and then I'm going to put it above the line by double-clicking it. Now my sort now matches my layout. Okay. Now, once you get more proficient with reports, your sort does not have to match your layout, but the way the sort works, first it's going to alphabetize by the DCS. Then within each DCS, it's going to organize and alphabetize by the vendor. Then within each vendor, it's going to organize by the description 1. And if there is a difference between the description 1 and description 2, it will then organize by description 2. So by taking size and attribute off of here, if I have any style-driven items that come in different sizes and colors, they're all going to share these 4 fields in common. What differentiates them is the size and attribute field. Okay? So, sort, the more you put in your sort, the more detail it's going to give you about what you're asking for. The less you have on your sort, the less detail, and I'll give you an example of that in a little bit here. Okay? So once you have your layout and sort done, you're through the hardest part of building the report. Now next we're going to go to the totals button. Now this screen, probably more so than any other screen, I hear customers complain that it's confusing, it's hard to read. If you start to look at this screen as 4 little smaller screens within the screen, or little sections. So the first section being subtotal, run total, when. In other words, when my DCS changes, that's when I'd like to see a subtotal for that DCS. So when, let's say my department is A, when I go from department A to department B, I will get a subtotal of department A. When I go from department B to C, I'll get a subtotal of department B. Okay? Now, if you mark a subtotal, run total, when, you have to mark a subtotal what or a run total what. So I generally, my thing is, if I can subtotal by it, why not? I never know when that piece of information might be helpful. Run total what? I have very rarely seen this used, but the run total would give you a running total of your department. So here's your total for Department A. Then here's your total for Department A and B combined. Then here's your total for A, B, and C combined. So it's giving you a running total of your departments, okay, not showing you specifically how each department is doing. Okay, so I'm going to skip over that and not use it. Last little group here is grand total what? And again, if I can get a grand total on it, why not? Okay, so I'm going to move the line down so everything is above the line and active. Okay, now the next button down the side is the ranking button. Ranking is very similar to sorting, except as you can tell, it's only dealing in value fields, whereas sort was only dealing in descriptive fields. If you use ranking, it will supersede sorting. Ranking is most commonly used when you're looking at a bestseller or a worst seller report. So no longer do I want things to be alphabetical based on a department or a vendor or a description. I want them to be in order based on a value. The highest quantity sold, the highest dollar amount brought in, something along those lines. So if we were going to rank this report by quantity sold, I would put that quantity sold above the line. So my top item may belong to Department Z, even though alphabetically, Z is not the first thing that I would have if I was doing it alphabetically. Now, let's say that I sold 10 items in Department Z, and I sold 10 items in Department M. Well, what would happen, because the quantity sold number is the same for two different items, that's when it's going to go back and look at the sort and say, okay, first we're going to group them alphabetically by the department. Okay, so Department M would come before Department Z because the quantity sold was the same for both of them. Now, you'll notice this arrow over here. This arrow, when it's going from the top going down, is going to show you your top sellers. If I want to see my worst sellers, I click on the arrow and turn the direction. Now it's coming from the bottom going up, so it's going to show me my bottom items, the ones that are not selling, which is just as important to know as the items that are selling. Okay? I'm actually going to not rank it. That's not what I'm going for in this report. Okay? Options, this is kind of where all those miscellaneous, catch-all, they don't fit anywhere else type of settings are. So you can change the title of your report if maybe you forgot to take the parentheses 1 off the end, or you decided you didn't like the name that you gave it, or you noticed a typo, or whatever the case might be. You can change the name of this at any point by changing it here in Options. The access level is who is going to be able to see it. Now, most typically, this is not exclusively, but most typically, level 4, everybody can see. Every cashier, everybody that works in your store has at least a level 4. Level 3, we usually try to assign that to supervisors, key holders, that type of group. Level 2 is usually reserved for managers and buyers, back office staff. Level 1 and sysadmin, we usually reserve for the owner, the accountant, and or the system operator, the people that are in charge of the system or deal with the finances. So I'm going to change this to a level 4. I don't have a problem with my cashiers seeing what items are selling. Now know that even though I have a cost field on this report, if your cashiers are not allowed to see cost, which typically they're not, what they will see in place of the cost, they'll see the column there, but they'll see asterisks in place of the numbers. So they won't be able to actually see your cost even though the field is on there. Okay? The subtitle, you can use for anything that you want. It could be, depending on what I find on this report, now run this other report and put the two together. Or it could be maybe you weren't able to put the full report name that you wanted there, so you can put a subtitle to it. What you use it for is up to you, and that is something that you will see at the time of printing when you run this report. Okay, next, we do recommend that you try to set up a dynamic date range, meaning go with whatever time frame you are going to run this report the most often. Now, that doesn't mean that you're locked into that time frame. It's just going to default to that. So I'm going to set this to always look at the previous month. To do so, I click on the little button here at the end of the line, and I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow, and I'm going to choose question mark months, question mark months ago. You'll also notice we have today, we have yesterday, week to date, month to date, year to date, and then you have week to date, month to date, year to date for the previous year. Okay? Now with the question mark months ago, I'm telling the system that I want to see a 1-month time frame. That's the duration I want to see of information. But I don't want to see this month, which if I leave my starting at 0, you'll notice it's showing me this month, even though this month has not been completed. But if I come down to the starting and I say start 1 month ago, then it is showing me the previous month. So as the calendar rolls over, so too does this time frame. So because I'm running this report in October, these settings are going to show me September. If I was running this report in December, it would be showing me November. Okay? Now, again, it's not that you can't change that on a case-by-case basis, but we do recommend that you set it up for the most common time frame you're going to run it from. One of the primary reasons is that way it sets the time to be 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m., which gives me a full 24-hour window. Okay? Otherwise, if you left it on a fixed period, let me change that back. Okay, like this. Then the times could very easily be something off the wall. And the problem with that is that then it's only going to show you the sales that you did during those weird time frames. So again, I'm going to set it back to what it was. Okay. Now the filter that we have attached to this is the default sales filter. That's going to be important for you to know when we get down to this edit filter button. Okay. But you can attach, you can make custom filters, and you can attach custom filters to any report that you want. I need to stress that you do not want to make changes to the default filter. If you do, it will affect every other report that is using the default filter, which most of them are using the default. Okay? Orientation, if it is blank, it is defaulting to portrait, but you can change it to landscape if you need to. Now, I cleared off some of my fields, so I shouldn't need to turn it to landscape, and if I find that I don't need to, I will change it back to portrait. Okay, and then non-repeat mode, kind of a hard one to describe, so I'm going to show you rather than tell you. Okay, if I click on Print Now, I have last month's time frame in there, so I'm just going to click OK. So I actually do still need landscape, okay, because I added in description too. I probably could take that off since it's blank, but what you're seeing here, non-repeat mode, you'll notice that the department and the vendor are only showing up once. It is not repeating them for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth line, okay? So let me go ahead and say no. I'm going to go ahead and take the description 2 out of my layout. And I'm going to go back to options, and now I know I can fit it portrait. So now I'm going to show you what repeat mode, non-repeat mode set to no would do. and you will see a very definite change. Okay, so it repeats the department code and the vendor code for each item in that grouping. Okay, that's non-repeat mode set to no. Okay, so like I said, it's one of those things that's easier to show you than it is to try to explain how it works, because the way they worded it, non-repeat mode, do I want it to non-repeat? No, I do not want it to non-repeat. I want it to repeat every single line. If you don't want it to repeat, you choose yes. So it's kind of backwards. When you don't want something, you typically think no. In this case, when you don't want it, you want to say yes. Okay, line feed after Datablock. This 99.9% of the time, we do set this to no. If you have I've only had one customer who on purpose did this. She wanted an extra blank line after every line on her report so she could make notations because of the report she was taking to market. And she wanted to be able to put notes underneath there that she discussed with the vendor. So, but typically you are going to want that set to no. Now the record limit wouldn't come into play with this particular report, but if we were making a bestseller or a worst seller, I may want to tell it I want to see my top 15. Or my bottom 50. I'm giving it a limit. Don't show me everything. Just show me the top 15 or the bottom 50 or whatever number you choose. Okay? Now, receipt types allowed. This is strictly up to you depending on what you're going for with your report. By default, you're just going to look at sales and returns. For the most part, that's what you're going to want. But again, it does depend on the report you're making. In this case, I'm not going to change anything. Okay? The canceled reversed receipts, same thing. Typically, you're going to use just the normal. But if I was running a report to see all of my reversals, then I would uncheck normal and I would check reversing and reversed. Okay? But typically, 98% of the time, you're probably going to want just normal. And then lastly, do I want to see my net sales? And it's strictly a yes or no question. So let's say that I sold 3 of a given item and 1 got returned. If I set this to no, I'm going to see 1 line that shows I sold 3 and 1 line that shows that 1 was returned, and I have to figure out that that's 2, that I actually only sold 2. Whereas if I set it to yes, I will see 1 line on the report, and it's already done the math for me. Now, I do want to caution you, if you set this to yes, there is a very good chance that you will see an item on your sales report that shows that you sold 0. Now, you may be wondering, well, why does it show me that item if I haven't sold any? The fact is you have sold them, but the same amount has been returned. That's why it's showing a quantity sold of 0. If you did not sell an item, it will not show up on your sales report unless you sold and returned the same quantity of that item. Okay? Now, lastly, we get down to this Edit Filter button. And I want to caution you, again, if you change the default filter, you will change it for everybody using that filter. I can't tell you how many tech calls we get where somebody says, my reports are not right, and come to find out, you know, the owner made a change to the filter, but when the buyer goes ready to run their report, they had no idea that the owner had been in there changing things, and so their report doesn't come out right because it's got that filter in there. So if you click on Edit Filter, you feel free to add fields to the filter screen. So that's not going to affect anybody, just having that available to filter by. So I'm just going to kind of scroll down and see what kind of information I might want to put on there. And honestly, everything that I would want, let's do tax code. Okay, so tax code gets added to it by double-clicking. Okay, but it does not hurt anything having that extra choice there. Where it becomes a problem is when I click on criteria and I choose a particular department, a particular vendor, I filter it some way, somehow, and I save that filter. Now, I've just changed that filter for every other report using this particular report. So I'm going to click on Elements again and get out of there. Okay. Now, one last button that I want to show you in here is the Appearance button. It's not critical to making a report, but sometimes it can make a difference if you're trying to make some extra room. So the Appearance button allows me to change the font of my report header, the information that I see in the upper corner. It also lets me change my page header, which is what I see in the upper right-hand corner, my date and my page number. It lets me change the column headings, so the titles along the top of each column. Lets me change the details, the information that feeds into it, and then lastly, it lets me change my totals. Now, I personally like to change my totals and make them stand out just a little bit more than everything else. So I'm going to make that bold, and I'm going to increase it by 2. So now you can see that my totals are going to be a little bit bolder and more noticeable than all my other fields. Okay, again, you do not have to use Appearance if you don't want to, but know that it can help you make things fit, or if you have a particular font style that you like, you could have all of your reports be in a certain font style. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the design, and I'm going to save this report. Okay, and then when I click on Print, again, it has my time frame that I want, but I can change that if I want to, or I can leave it alone. Okay, so now you will notice I still have non-repeat mode set to no, but I'm getting a subtotal for each department, and it's nice and big and bold. It's easy to see. Okay, and then I have a grand total at the very bottom. Okay, so that report now, this is the one that we customized compared to the original. Okay, same report, just ours was cleaned up, just a little bit different view of it. Same information. My grand totals are the same regardless of which one I use, but the other one is cleaned up for my needs, not what the developer thinks are my needs. Okay, so same bottom line number, but to me a little easier to read this way. Okay, that is making a report. Now, I had mentioned to you that I would show you the difference between putting a lot of things in your sort, like we did with the item summary, versus, say, a department summary. Okay, now I'm just going to make a copy of it because you never want to change the default. Okay, and I'm going to put an exclamation at the beginning of this and put it to the top of my list. Okay, and then I'm going to edit this, and I think I'll just leave it the way that it is, but the sort, you'll notice in the sort, we only have the DCS. So what's going to happen when it gets down to that department L that I've sold 10 or 15 different items on, it's going to combine all of the numbers for all of the items that belong to this DCS into one line. So if I click on Print here, well, first off, let me get my date range set up. So you see how the date range shows 1:39 p.m. to 1:39 p.m.? What are the chances that, I mean, there's the chance that you sold something at 1:39 or that you updated at 1:39, but I want to see everything that happened for the day or for the month. So I'm going to set this time frame. Okay. And then I'm just going to click on Print, and the difference that you're going to see here is exclusively because of the sorting capabilities. Well, I put in the wrong time frame. I need months. There we go. So instead of having a line for every individual item that's sold, I see it by my DCS as one combined total, okay, versus the item summary, same information, same time frame. I sold the same items, but this one has a lot more detail as to what I sold. Rather than putting all of these on one line, I see the individual breakdown of each item that was sold. Okay? Any questions about summaries, about making summaries? Okay? I'm going to go ahead and move forward then, and we're going to talk about journals. Now, journals are very similar to summaries in the way that they're made. Okay? I am going to start with a invoice journal, and I'm going to make a copy of it. And I'm actually going to change this invoice. Back in the day, for those of you that were not around during version 7 or earlier, back in version 7 or earlier, we used to refer to receipts as invoices. So that's kind of a throwback to those old days. And I'm going to put the word webinar on the end. Okay, and click OK. It's now sitting at the top of my list here. Now I can go ahead and edit and change what I want to change. So the first thing I'm going to do, I don't deal with a lot of companies, so I'm going to get rid of company name. Maybe you don't track customers, which the data that I have in here right now, I know that they don't track customers. Okay, I'm going to get rid of address 1, 2, and 3, and the zip code. Okay, I would rather know who the cashier was. Okay, I would, come on. Oh, there it is right there. I'm going to move that down. Okay, so I'd rather have the cashier. I'd rather see the quantity sold on the receipt. And I'd rather see the price involved on the receipt. Now, anytime you see EXT, that does stand for extended. And extended is always quantity times that unit field. So if I'm seeing, extended C dollar, that would be quantity times the unit cost will give me the extended cost. D is always discount. M is always margin. When you see a T, that's for tax. Okay, I want this one right here. Okay, and I'm going to move that up. Now I'm going to move that underneath there. This is going to come up here. I don't really care about cost. I do want to see if there was any shipping dollars. I also want to see if there was any tax. So I'm going to go to extended T, and I'm going to put tax above the line as well. So if I add the extended price with any shipping charges and any tax dollars, it should add up to the receipt total. Okay? Tender name is just going to let me know if they paid cash, check, credit card, or if it was a split. If it was a split, it will say split, but it won't tell you what the split was. Okay? Now that I have my, I think I would like to see receipt date on here as well. So let's do receipt date. Okay? I think that would be helpful. And I'm going to move that up to the very top of the list. Okay? Maybe I'll do it this way. Now, the sort, again, the layout is what I'm going to see. The sort is how I'm going to see it. Okay? I don't need store there. So it's going to break down each receipt number as a separate line item. And if you think about it, that means that every cell is going to be its own line item because every receipt number is unique. Unless you are set up to have independently sequenced numbers on each workstation, meaning workstation 1 is on receipt number 523 and workstation 2 is on receipt number 2553. So if you have the individual sequencing on each workstation, you might want to add workstation number to this as well. Now you'll notice there is a document SID above the line. SID standing for System Identification Number. Okay? It has to be above the line. Okay? If you try to move it down and you save it, it will tell you put it back. Okay? It has to be in the sorting. That's what's going to make sure if you're on receipt number 553, it's more than likely because you have rang up enough sales that your numbers have rolled over and started over again. If I'm looking at a big enough time frame, I could potentially see the original 553 as well as the new 553 that we just rang up yesterday. The document SID is going to make sure that those two don't get combined into one record. Every document has a unique system identification number, regardless of whether the receipt number has rolled over or not. Okay? Now my totals, I don't need a subtotal when my receipt number changes or my document SID changes, because in my layout, I put the receipt total. So, and I know that if I got a subtotal for every receipt, it would just be redundant to that information. So I don't need a subtotal here, which means I'm going to skip over these next two sections. I do, however, want a grand total. Okay? So I put every value that I can above the line in grand total what? Now ranking, again, you'll notice it's only the value fields, but that's not what I'm looking for here. I can go to options, change my access level, okay, put in my time frame that I want, and I'm going to do the same time frame I was doing before. Okay. I know well, this will probably fit portrait, but I'm going to turn it landscape just in case. Actually, I think I'll leave it portrait so you can see it. Okay, non-repeat mode I want set for yes. Doesn't really matter because every receipt number is going to be different. Okay, line feed after data block, I'm going to leave that set to yes so you can see it. Okay, I'm not going to give it a record limit. I'm double checking. I'm only getting sales and returns. I'm only getting normal sales. That's all what I want. I want to use the net value. Now you'll notice there's an extra setting here. Show item detail, and it's a yes or no question. Okay, I'm going to set it to no, and actually I'll set it to yes by default. Know that this is a setting that you can change each time that you run the report. You have to remember to change it, but it can be changed each time you run the report. Now you'll notice we have an extra button in here that we did not have with the summaries, and that is the details button for us to show the computer what item detail we wanted to show us. So I'm going to click on the details button, and you'll notice it's all about the items. So I'm going to move this up here. Okay. So I have the item number, the DCS, the vendor code, description 1 and 2, attribute size, I don't need those, quantity sold, and the price. Okay. As you can tell, there's other fields down here that you can use. They're all item related. Okay. So that's everything that I want. I'm going to click OK. Now at this point, I am going to change my grand total so it bolds itself up. And then I'm going to save this. I'm going to click on print. The time frame is what I want. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, what you are seeing here is the receipt information. Receipt number, date, cashier, quantity sold, price, shipping, tax, and the total, and how it was paid. Okay? What you're seeing here, you see how there's this blank space in here? That's the line feed after data. Now that made this report 58 pages long. I'm going to turn it off, and I bet you we cut that in half at least. Save that. Okay, we're going to print it. So now I am at 51 pages, but you'll notice I do have this stop here, so that lets me know I need to go landscape. Now, I can change it to go landscape at the time of printing, but rather than have to remember to do that each time, it's better to change it as a permanent thing. Okay, so I'm going to change that from portrait to landscape. And this is one of the reasons why I stay in the edit mode while I'm testing it, so I can quickly make those changes. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and try to print it again. Now this time, I'm going to turn off the item detail. I don't want to see the items that were on the receipts. I click OK. Now all I'm seeing is the receipt number and all of its information all the way down. Okay, and I went from 51 pages to 10 pages by taking the detail off. Okay, but keep in mind with journal reports, you are required to have the document sit in there. You also have the option of seeing the items that were on the document if you choose to. And if you choose to, you need to touch on to this details button. Okay? Any questions about journals? Anything at all? Okay, then we're going to move on. So I'm going to back out of here, and now we're going to go into merchandise reports. Now, merchandise reports by far are the most popular report for longtime retailers. Retailers that have been doing this a while, they know what they want to do comparisons, they want to look at, advanced information. So just to kind of show you, you'll notice there is all kinds of sales by department last 7 days versus same last year. Let's do sales by item year to date versus same last year. Okay, so I open that up, I run that. Okay, now what it's showing me, if you look up here at the top, net S1 is this year to date, and net S2 is last year to date. You can change the column headers so they don't say net S1 or net S2, but if I'm looking at this, this is how many we sold this year to date, this is how many we did last year to date. And then from there on out, everything is duplicated. Average price, extended price, average cost, extended cost, and then of course margin. We would need to change this. This is already landscape, so what we would need to do with this report is either be willing to give up some fields like attribute and size. That'll give us a little room, but not enough. This is when you would go in and you would start messing with your font sizes to try to make a little bit more room. By default, all of your fonts are in Arial size 8. You can take it down to a 6 and it's still legible. 7 is about as far down as I usually like to go. 6 is pretty darn small. But what I want to show you is what makes a merchandise report so unique. And I'm going to create a new one because the report I'm going to make is not like anything else that's in here. I have a lot of buyers that like to have some idea of what kind of money they have already spent with their vendors. And in order to do that, because Retail Pro does not technically have an open to buy module, the closest that we can get to that is to show what you have on order based on the time frame. So I'm going to create a new one. Now the first thing that it does is it brings me into the options page so I can give my report a name. I'm going to call this on order next, actually I'm going to say 6 months. Okay, there we go. Now I know I'm going to want to turn it landscape. In merchandise reports, you almost always have to turn them landscape because there's just so much you end up wanting to put on there that sometimes you have to be picky about what you keep. Now the first thing, unlike summaries and journals, the first place that you need to start with a new merchandise report is in the options page. not just because of your report name, but because you need to define your data types. Right now, I don't have any data types defined. So I'm going to click on that button and then open it up, okay? And when I click on Add, you will see these are all of the different areas that can be a data type. My on-hand, what my minimum levels are, what my maximum levels are, my in-transit to, receipts, return receipts, or net sales, vouchers, return vouchers, or net receiving, transfer in or out, and net transfers, purchase orders, transfer orders, everything that you can, every document that's made in the system basically is represented here. I'm going to be making an on-order report, so that means I want purchase orders. Okay? Now the description is a longer field where you can pretty much describe what you want. So I'm going to do on order this month. Okay? Now I'm going to come down to my column header. You are limited to 6 characters here, so you might just put this month like that. Okay? What you choose is entirely up to you. Now I'm going to set the time frame to be a dynamic date range, so no matter when I run this report, it's going to be showing me this month for this data type. So I'm going to choose month to date. Okay, so far, what have I done this month? I click OK. So you'll see that it puts in through the 14th, because obviously today is the 14th. That is my data type 1. Okay, I'm going to add another one, and I'm just going to add the same thing over and over again, but with different time frames. Okay, now this one, I'm going to use the question mark months ago. I want to see a 1-month duration, but I want it to look into the future, so I'm going to go into the negative numbers. You'll see it shows me next month. Click OK. Because again, purchase orders, I'm looking for futures. What money do I have laid out that's due to ship in the future? Okay, then see, I didn't quite put in, let's do on order, there we go. Click OK. I'm going to add another one, purchase orders, 3 months out. I make this 3 MO, and again, I'm going to use my question mark months. I want a 1-month duration, but I want it to be 2 months in the future. And if you're not sure, watch your actual date range, and it's based on today's date. So if 2 months in the future from today should be December, and that's what I show here. Okay. So I'm going to click OK. You'll also see the date range over here, so you can kind of double check yourself. Again, I'm going to go purchase orders. Okay, we're going to go 4 months. So I'm just basically getting my data type set up. Okay. Now, there you go, and as you can see, the dates are moving ahead. I'm going to do one more that's specific for a time frame, and then I'm going to do a total. So click this, question mark months ago, 1-month duration, moving ahead 5 months. Okay? So I have from October through March of next year. Now I want to add in a 7th data type. You can have up to 16. Not that I recommend you use all 16. They rarely fit on a landscape page, but you can have up to 16 if you want it. I'm going to stop at 7, and I'm going to say on order totals. Okay, and this one is, I'm going to label this column header the same way. And this is going to be question mark months ago, but I'm looking at 6 months starting this month. Okay, I want to see from this month forward for 6 months. And if you notice, that gives me the full date range of what I've set up in the previous 6 data types. Okay, now once I have those set up, I click OK. Now I am ready to go to my layout. Now, you do need to have some sort of descriptive field here, okay? You can't just have that. Well, you could, but you're not going to know what it's related to. You need to have some sort of information here. For on order, I would rather see it by vendor code than by department code. I need to know how much I've spent with each vendor and when that money is going to come due. Okay, when they ship it is when they're going to bill me. Okay, after I have my descriptive field in there, I'm going to scroll down because the find box doesn't work real well for the data types until I get down to where I see DTs. Now DT1, again, remember, was this month. I want to see the cost, and if I can, I want to see the quantity and the cost of every data type. So I grabbed number 1 now. I'm going to go down to number 2, grab the same fields. The good news is the fields are always in the same order. So quantity is always the first field that you'll see, and cost is not too far below it. So I'm just grabbing these fields. I have 7 of them to grab, so. Okay, and last but not least, quantity and cost. Now, I may have to make some room because, as you can tell, that's a lot of fields, even for a landscape page. Okay, but I'll make that decision once I see it. Next, I'm going to go to my sort, and I only want to sort by my vendor code. Again, it matches the descriptive field in my layout. Okay, I do want to get grand totals of everything. Because every vendor is going to be one line, I don't need a subtotal by vendor, which is the only thing I can subtotal by. But I do want a grand total of how much money is out there. Okay? Now, ranking I'm going to skip over. Options I'm going to go back and touch. Make sure that I've applied a filter to it. I haven't left anything undone. Okay, everything is good here. And I'm going to go to my appearance and change my totals because I like my totals bolded. Okay. And then I'm going to save this. Now, I honestly don't think this customer has POs in here, and I'm 99.9% sure, but this will still give me an idea of how big this report is. So I'm going to click OK. And nothing to print. That's what I was afraid of. So I know from experience that these are not all going to fit on that page. Now I have a couple of options. Do I really need to know how many units I've ordered, or is it more important to know how much money I've put out there? To me, it's more important to know the dollars. So one way of making room would be to get rid of all of the quantity fields. You could also go to the appearance and change the column headings and take it down a little bit in font. You could do the same thing with your details. Okay? And that would buy you a little bit of room as well. Okay, so a couple of ways that you can make some room, either get rid of fields or change your appearance. Okay? Any questions about merchandise reports? Anything at all? Anything that you're not quite sure, you need a report and you're not quite sure where to start or how to build that report? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and move on then. So I had mentioned earlier that you can also make custom filters. So let's say back on our sales item summary report, we always want to filter for a particular vendor or a particular department. Well, if I change the sales filter that's attached to it now, then it's going to change all of the reports that use that sales filter by default. And you can see there's a lot of them. They're all going to be affected by that one little change to make your report what you want it to be. So instead, you can go into filters, find the original filter, the default filter, and make a copy of it. And I'm just going to relabel this. Okay, and then click OK. Now I highlight the new copied filter, and I can edit it to my heart's content. I can come in here and I can say, I only want to see, you know what, I probably should take my time frames back a little bit more. So I only want to see a particular, let's do this one. Okay, and then I save this report, this filter, and I back out and go back into the reports, and I'm going to edit and open this report again and switch out the filter. So I'm going to go to Options and then go to my filter field and change it out for my new custom filter that I put in there. And then I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to run this. I tried dropping in some data from a little bit better client for reporting purposes. I just need to take my dates back a little further because the data I had from them was quite old. Okay, so now you'll notice my filter is in place. I don't have to remember to do the filter. By making a custom filter and attaching it to it, I don't have to remember to do that each time. So I click OK. Let's see here. I'm going to go to Print, clear the filter. Let's see what kind of, see if it's because I filtered or because of my time frame. Yeah, it's because of my filter. Okay, so now I know who I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to go into Edit Filter, and because it's a custom filter, I don't have to worry about messing anybody else up. It's only my report that's using it. And I'm going to change it from COL to TNF and save it. Okay, and I print it. My filter is in there with TNF. I click OK. Whoop, I have to change my time frame. Okay, I change my time to be 2014. And then click OK. Now I'm only seeing TNF for each department that I have. Okay. Now again, I can take this and change my non-repeat mode to say yes, save it, do the same thing, same exact time frame, same filter, only now I've turned off the repeat mode, and the report looks a little different than it did before. Okay? So that's how you make a custom filter. Find the default filter in the filter list and make a copy of it and relabel it. So you have two buttons here on the side. The Reports button is going to give you a list of reports and summaries or journals or merchandise, wherever you happen to be. The filter is going to give you the default filters that belong to the summaries or journals or merchandise. Okay? Any questions about making custom filters? Okay. Okay then, so the last thing that I'd like to leave you with is report groups. Now, report groups are a wonderful little thing that I love. In fact, I use them myself. I run the reports here at BHD for the company, and I have a group that I run every week of 13 reports. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, I'm running those 13 reports. but I don't have to go and find them and run them individually. I just go into report groups and I run my report group, and it runs all 13 right back to back on top of each other. Now with report groups, you can go to New and create a new group. The name of that group can be anything you want. So I'm just going to keep it consistent. You can set the access level to who has access to this group. I'm going to leave it on sysadmin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in my journals, I want to grab my journal that I changed the, there we go, the receipt journal. Okay, I double click it, put it above the line. I go to merchandise, I want to find the report that I made for my on order. Okay, so I double click on my on order. And again, that's above the line. I go to summaries, I'm going to grab the reports that I made in there. So department summary, item summary. Okay, and those are the ones that I want in my report group. I save my report group. Now I see it listed in there, so I can come in anytime, highlight the group, and click on print. It shows me what reports are going to print. I can uncheck anything I don't want to print, or I can change the time frame on anything I want to print by highlighting and clicking on properties. Now the main reason that most people use the report groups is because they want to schedule their reports to run automatically in the wee hours of the morning while they're home sleeping. In order to do that, the reports have to be what I refer to as static, meaning that they have to be able to run without human contact. So your date range needs to be set dynamically. Your filter needs to be the way that you want it to filter, if at all. And that way they can run sight unseen. They just run, and they're sitting there waiting for you when you get in. Okay? So I'm going to cancel that. But if you click on print, and I just click OK, it's going to run through all of the reports. Nothing to print. Nothing. I picked a real winner there. So here's my department summary. Okay. If I close this one, wow, I didn't have anything in there that would run. Let's see, item summary. What did I do with my properties here? That's why. Okay. Cancel. So I'm going to back up, go back into my summary. I discovered by putting that special filter on there, it's messing up my report. So I'm going to put it back to the default, save it, and back out. Now, by changing it in the actual report where I originally made it, it changes my grouped report as well. Okay? So that one should run now. This one I know will not run. And let's see what's going on with this one. Okay. That's not the right report. So let me go back into that group. I'm going to take that out, and that's the one that I want. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and save that. So if I click on print, it shows the 4 reports. I'm going to turn off the one that I know I don't have any data for, and then click OK. Okay. Now, here is my receipt journal. Okay, it's 70 pages long. I can print it off, or I can go to the very last page, print off the very last page. Okay, I'm done with that report. So I close it, and I'm not going to save it. Then there's my item summary report right behind it. Again, I can print it off, but I'm not going to save it. Saving it saves a soft copy into your RPro system that you can go back and look at later. But other than on-hand reports, I don't generally recommend that you save your reports, because other than on-hand reports, you can always run a sales report or an on-order report or a, department summary or whatever you want to run and put in whatever time frame you want. The one exception to that is on-hand reports. I can't run an inventory on-hand report and say, but show me what I had on hand December 31st of 2014. I don't have that ability. So I do always recommend to my clients, run your on-hand summary on the last day of the year and save it, because it's going to be a long report. They're usually hundreds of pages long. Okay? Save it. That way you took a snapshot after you closed on the last day of the year, and when your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need the value of our inventory December 31st for the accountant, you're going to be the hero and you're going to have that ready and able to give to them. And all they really usually are looking for is the last page. But by doing that on the last day of the year before or right after you close, you've captured that information in time. And now that it's saved to your system, you can pull it up anytime you want. So just know that when you save a report, it does go under this review header, okay? So if I run this report, if I open up this report right here was ran, it was back for 2013. Somebody ran it and saved it 2 years ago. But it's still in the system because somebody wanted to save it. Now you will notice not only do you have a review button here, you also have a review button in your inventory. Okay? So anywhere you see this review button, you can pull up that same list of reports that you saved. Okay? So any questions about anything that I covered? Anything at all? And okay, any questions about anything not necessarily report related? I'm going to take everybody off of mute, so that way you don't have to raise your hand.
Yeah. Do you happen to have any scheduled webinars and just a Retail Pro overview of the system?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch a webinar on Retail Pro what?
Let me take you off of, oh, it's still got a bad echo to it. Yeah, I'm just wondering about a Retail Pro overview.
A Retail Pro overview? We don't have a webinar on that. What I would recommend, go into your e-manuals.
Okay.
And you should have this on your Retail Pro too. It should be right along the top. And then go into the user's guide. Yeah. Chapter 2 is probably the best chapter for just a general overview. It's going to give you all the basic information, but it will give you references. If you want a little deeper information, it'll give you the chapter to look at.
Because I've been editing filters and making copies of reports and editing them, but I keep bumping into terminology that I'm not quite sure what it means.
Gotcha, gotcha. And once upon a time, we did have a feature of the month up on our website that explained the report terminology. You're not alone in that. Like I had mentioned, if you just want to jot down, anytime you see C, it is related to cost. P is always retail price. T is always tax.
I'm good with that, I think.
Okay. And then margin and discount are also in there, M's and D's.
Yeah, no, I think it was in filters.
It was in filters?
Yeah, let me see if I can bring
it. Let me bring up the reports again. The filters in the actual Retail Pro or in the reports?
In Retail Pro.
In regular Retail Pro, okay. So I'm just going to bring up a filter. And I'm going to open up the filter design so we can see every field that's available.
Oh, we share a user virtual terminal. I can't get in.
Okay, I gotcha.
But there was like a module or something like that particular filter applied to.
What I would recommend is schedule maybe 30 minutes with the trainer and we can work with you one-on-one and actually get dialed into your system and see what you're seeing and hopefully explain it a little bit better to you?
Because we have so many filters that look like they're the same, but they're different filter names. Some of those could have been set up by different users, but some of them look like they point to different modules or databases or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I would probably spend 20 or 30 minutes with a trainer, just one-on-one, where we could see what you're talking about and hopefully explain it a little bit better to you once we know what's hanging you up.
Sure, because I don't want to go start deleting filters or cleaning things up.
No. You will upset some people in that process.
Yeah.
Good question, though. Thank you. Yeah. What store are you with? And I'll have somebody follow up with you.
I'm with Space Needle.
Okay. I will have somebody, and this is, and your first name?
Jeanette Lewis.
Jeanette, okay. So I will have somebody follow up with you, Jeanette, on that.
All right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, then. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start.